It's alive. Bitcoin is alive. That's right. We are back in action, and all it took was $4 trillion. That is right. The debt ceiling has been lifted, guys. They decided to cut back on about $50 billion of spending, and they've increased the debt ceiling by 4 trillion. So, if you can make sense of that, you're smarter than me. But in other words, basically, that means that the printer is coming back eventually, but not quite yet. We will take a quick dive into the charts and give you guys everything you need to know about the debt ceiling and this big move on Bitcoin that happened to cause this really nice weekly close. So let's quickly take a look at that. We'll take a look at the stock market as well, inflation data that we're expecting over the next couple of months to come, and the next direction in the market. So at the moment, we ended up getting a really nice weekly close here on BTC, which is the classic Morningstar reversal. Usually to get a really strong close, you want to see it close as a bullish engulfing Morningstar, which means that you want to see it close above the previous close of the down candle. And that gives a much more higher probability this is going to continue in that direction. But this is still a nice one. I just want to see the next weekly get a close above 28,400, and that to definitely be a blue or a green week, if that makes sense, to push to the upside. Now, on the daily time frames, sorry, I should say back before we move forward on the weekly, the key level that we want to see the weekly close above is above this weekly order block here. We did get a really nice close above that, but in my opinion, the push had just been too strong from 19.6 all the way up to pretty much what is that, about 31K, right? And that was pretty much a 60% move in one rally. Didn't really have any pullbacks. So, we sort of had to have a bit of a pullback, and it didn't quite get a clean close. Well, it did get a clean close above, but then instantly rejected. So, and then you can see the next subsequent weeks rejected from the order block quite aggressively. And yeah, we've just been trending down since then. So close above that really opens up the move up to this 38K level that I've been looking for some time, right? Which is up to this order block up here. We could see some issues at 36 as well. And then obviously there's this level here as well at 32, but we'll take a lower look on the lower time frames as well. More importantly, in my opinion, is it does seem to be that we are locking in the 63-day as the 60-day cycle low here. We can see from the previous low back in the 10th of March, which was the start of the banking financial collapse that we were seeing in the regional banks in the US. And then basically, the Federal Reserve came out and said they're going to backstop all the banks, and, price just launched from then. So 63 days since then to the low that we put in here with this nice wick. Was getting a little bit concerned down here, but we ended up coming in and finding support. One key thing that I should highlight, right, was we have come up to, let me set this up properly for you. I have come back up to the 200 weekly moving average. So you can get that up like this, just set it up to 200, and you can have it on any time frame. I like to make the 200 weekly in red, right? You can change it, the source here, for the close, and then the time frame on the chart here, change that to the weekly, right? And then that will put in the 200 weekly moving average on your lower time frame charts, right? So we go out to the weekly, this is what it looks like, right? And the 200 weekly is always a really strong and very, very important level. And basically what has happened is we've come back and done a really nice support and resistance flip off that with a nice pin bar wicking below it, and showing high time frame buyers stepping in finally on the spot market through here. And we can see that has popped up. If we have a look here on a Coinalyze chart, looking very nice through here with that spot buying finally coming back into the market, because we haven't seen that in a while. Now, importantly to add, the whales are really leading this move. We can see back down here when price was still around 400, we had at least one whale buy very aggressively through here, and that sort of pushed us up to reclaim the lows through here at 26,500, right? And since then, we finally found that little bit of buying through here, and the whales really started to step into the market, while the smaller participates with the normal size accounts, I should say the mid-sized accounts and the small sized accounts, they're still selling off quite aggressively on spot. Now, interestingly, if we switch across to perp, we can see here that there's aggressive shorting with the mid and a very aggressive shorting on the small sized accounts now that we've moved up into this range high area on BTC. So always very interesting to see how that ends up playing out. That I think they're probably going to end up being offside, to be honest, with so much participation coming in here from the whales, and then we're seeing the smaller accounts setting themselves up to get squashed on a breakout here above 28,500. But that still has to happen. Let's see if the whales end up following the small accounts, or if they decide to squeeze them all the shorts they've just loaded up through here, right? My inclination usually is towards that the whales win and the smaller accounts end up getting wrecked, but that's not always the case. Sometimes the whales lag a little bit and they catch up, but most of the time the whales end up manipulating the price structure and taking out all the smaller accounts. And it could just be right now that they're getting set up. They're basically setting it up so all the smaller accounts are shorting in through here because I think it's going to, okay, we just had a rally, it's going to be one more rally that just fails and rolls over. But in my opinion, the breakout from this area through here, we can see that the pattern has been every time we came up into a 4-hour order block, right, through here, rejected here, right, this one rejected from this order block through here, right? And then this one got rejected from that order block through there, right? So it came up, rejected, came up, rejected, came up, rejected, right? When we crossed through this one through here, that was pretty interesting to reclaim range lows. But now that we've taken out this order block through here, and we've also taken out the anchored VWAP level as well, which is pretty interesting. That is the first time pretty much in this downtrend that we've taken out the anchored VWAP from the previous high, right? The local high here. And we've flipped that now into support. Whenever you see, well, actually, it hasn't flipped into support just yet, but we're above it. If it comes back, it most likely will hold as support. But whenever you see a price move start to flip the trend, you'll see the anchored VWAP get flipped, and then price finds its way up again, right? And you can see how it's been resistance the whole way through here. So that is a handy little trick as well you can use. At the moment, we need to be careful, though, that this easily could end up coming back, at least for a little bit of a retest, right? That's a pretty nice SFP getting put in here on the 4-hour. On the 1-hour time frame, it's already closing. This has been quite a nice move, right? Pretty much since back here, it's been about 6 all the way up to the top of the wick, about an 8% move, right? So makes sense to take out this high here and then at least get some sort of consolidation before we break out. This easily could come back and retest this range high level through there and then take off as well. I think that'd actually be a really nice buy setup if we did come down here and then get, a nice 4-hour pin bar or something like that in there. That could be another buy entry trigger for me to add to this move. I did buy pretty aggressively. If you've been watching my last few videos, I was saying that I was buying in through here the other day, a daily pin bar like that. It was also a bullish divergence through here as well, right? Not highlighted by the indicator, but that's why it's important to be able to actually read the chart yourself and not just wait for it, because it hasn't put in a new pivot on the indicator. But this is still a bullish divergence, it's slightly making a higher low, and this is making a lower low, right? With a pin bar off the 200 weekly moving average. That was just, and also, knowing that in the cycle, we already put in the day 63 here, and this week most likely was the low for the cycle low. I was looking for a long time for a bottom throughout this range, and then just seeing that just seemed like, very highly likely to be a potential bottom anyway. So this was the trade setup anyway. and then looking for the top of this order block up here for target 1, and then the next one up here. So, nice, pretty much you're going to get around 4.5 if you take profit on both. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So nice little risk to reward setup there. Just need to see how this ends up closing out. I don't want to see this end up closing red. If it does, then I'll be looking for this to do that, right? Which isn't out of the question at all, and wouldn't be bad price action to retest the range high. This still is a falling wedge type setup, and we haven't broken out of the wedge, so it easily could come back and be choppy for a little bit longer. We have to see what the ES does, and how the narrative starts to form around the debt ceiling getting lifted and everything like that. I did put up a really big post the other day, yesterday on Twitter, about the debt ceiling being lifted. So if you guys want to check that out, jump over to my Twitter account, Dax Trader, and yeah, I wrote a fairly long thread on there about the potential for this to break out to the upside. And Kevin McCarthy coming out talking about basically the debt ceiling being lifted and him coming to an agreement with Joe Biden. So yeah, get in there and have a quick look at that if you want to. Some pretty good info in there. Right, so they've raised it about 12.73% from 31.4%. And they're lifting it by 4 trillion, right? So if you want more info on that, go and have a look. I compared it to the previous cycles. And basically my conclusion was that, in 2011, we did have a little bit of a pullback, but the market was in pretty rocky stage back then. So this is the chart here. I had a 16% pullback actually in the middle of it, but the chart was actually already crashing into the debt ceiling crisis. In 2013, they had another one, and the market pushed 7.47% immediately after it. So, the market has been pushing very aggressively, especially the NASDAQ at the moment. So I would tend to expect that the market will just continue to do what it's doing. Unless something crazy comes out in the details of the deal that's really clearly going to show that it's going to suck a lot of liquidity away from the market. Okay, so that is the main thing to discuss today, guys. Bitcoin is back. We need to keep our eyes on the NASDAQ because this has been obviously moving very aggressively to the upside. So let me go change the chart 1 sec. Right, this is my main NASDAQ chart. I probably should have it on that one because this is just on a under, but no need to stress about that. Really nice sideways range through here, reaccumulation with the spring, faking everybody out below range lows here, and then a nice push to the upside. So we need to see if this is going to continue all the way up to 15,200, because I'm not really seeing much resistance through here, to be honest. The only reason why this could end up pulling back is just because it's just pushed so hard. Like, it's already up 8%. And a lot of the tech stocks have moved really aggressively. Even Amazon pushed, which has been probably one of the biggest laggers. But let's look at Microsoft, for example. It's almost back at all-time highs. Apple pretty much back at all-time highs. Meta has been absolutely flying from its lows at the end of last year, up 200%. Google still a fair way off its all-time high, still 20% off. Nvidia obviously exploded really aggressively, and that's what led that last aggressive push up on the NASDAQ. And it's good to see Bitcoin finally getting a little bit of love, because we have been very closely tied to the NASDAQ stocks and the tech stocks until recently. Now it's more just relying on liquidity. So going to be interesting to see, because at the moment we do have a pretty big divide, and I think it's important to keep our eyes on what happens with this USD liquidity, as that is moving to the upside, but that could change because of the Treasury General account. Basically, it ended up becoming empty, right? And that's why they've had to raise the debt ceiling. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do around that, and if this USD liquidity starts to roll over. Because global liquidity has been aggressively not really selling off, but being withdrawn from the market. Global liquidity has been dropping fairly aggressively. So let's see if USD liquidity might, because they've raised the debt ceiling now, this might end up taking off. So we need to keep our eyes on that and see what happens over the next couple of weeks. Really importantly, though, I just want to touch on a few other things. Wrong chart. This is the one here. Just want to touch on Trueflation CPI data. They're about 3 months ahead of where the Federal Reserve is. So basically, we are looking at a potential August, September 2.8 or at least under 3 handle on inflation in the US. So that is very interesting to see. And other countries like the UK, it's very aggressive, very high, still at 13.11, right? That's absolutely monstrous and horrific. Feel really bad for anyone living in the UK at the moment. And that potentially is the reason why we're seeing this global liquidity move to the downside because, for example, I'm not 100% sure on Japan. I think they're removing liquidity still. Actually, sorry, Japan is just putting a little bit of liquidity in still at the moment. They have never slowed down actually, but the UK and the EU definitely removing lots of liquidity, doing a lot of quantitative tightening at the moment. And I'm not sure China hasn't really increased for a while. This is the Chinese central bank through here. They did put a little bit in when the banking crisis happened, and since then it's been pretty sparse. So potentially the rest of the world, well, obviously the rest of the world is withdrawing liquidity quite aggressively at the moment while the US is putting it in. And the rest of the world is pulling it out at a greater rate than the US is, right? So need to keep our eyes on the rest of the world's inflation rates as well. But at the moment, it's looking pretty good for the US because by the end of the summer, we could be underneath a 3, which means that the Federal Reserve is going to be being very, very close to starting to look at lowering rates. Now, the average for them to lower the interest rate after a pause. So we could get a pause next month, let's see, but stocks have been going crazy. So they're not under any pressure to pause, that's for sure. So we could get another 2.5 and then pause on the next FOMC, which will be the back end of the summer. And then so we could be looking at the first rate drop towards the back end of 2023, maybe Q4 or even Q1 2024, which starts to line up very closely with the Bitcoin halving, which is going to be in Q2 2024. So everything could align to cause quite a explosive pump in BTC. If they start turning the printer back on in Q2, Q3, just after the halving, rates start to get dropped by the Federal Reserve. Inflation is down, around 2% again, and unemployment rate, right, which we haven't mentioned just yet, but the unemployment rate is still at 3.4%, which is pretty much historic lows, right? This is going back 30 years, this chart, and it's the lowest that it's been in the last 30 years, even longer than that. We'll probably drop it back even further. Right. I think it's the lowest it's been in like 50 years or something. 1970s was the last time it was this low. We did get low around 3.9, 3.8 just before the dot-com bubble burst when, the economy had been super hot for, pretty much 20 years almost. So it's very interesting to see, the economy, everybody's expecting a recession, but everybody still has a job. 3.4% is huge, to have unemployment that low and inflation starting to come down. So until inflation, kicks up or has unexpected burst higher, if that keeps dropping and unemployment stays low around this 3.4%, it's hard to see a really bad recession kicking in unless something crazy happens in the commercial property market, right? That's probably the outlier at the moment, something nuts happening in commercial property market. And then, of course, all the black swan type events that are completely unforeseen, like wars and things like that, could cause issues as well. But that's something you can't really bet on as a trader. You have to play what's in front of you and what's happening and not think about those sorts of things. But at the moment, BTC is looking really good. A lot of altcoins are actually sweeping their range lows, right? Let's go quickly take a look at some of those. Ethereum leading the charge here, looking really nice. As we discussed in previous videos, right? Falling wedge through here actually has broken out and confirmed the upside. So kind of leading BTC a little bit in that race. Still breaking to the downside through here at the moment and slightly underperforming BTC. Just let me draw up this a little bit more accurately. Right, so we're kind of coming back up to test this trend line through here. So looks like it wants to roll over. If we can get a breakout through here, then alts are going to get a fair bit of love, in my opinion. Looking at dominance chart here at the moment, it has pushed again to the upside. Right, it has pushed again to the upside of this channel. So this is back to the DXY. 1 second. Right, and we are chopping sideways. So looks like it wants to go back to the top of this channel. If it breaks under, like I've drawn in this line here, if it ends up breaking under this level, that's when we're going to see the altcoin market really take off. So that's the key level through here at 46.9%. If it does roll over now, I'd be looking for a breakdown of here as well. That is when altcoins are going to start to shine. But if we break above this level through here, which is a very important key level for dominance, that's when the alt BTC charts are going to hurt really badly, and Bitcoin is going to rally. This could happen on a Bitcoin rally to 38K or something. It comes up and retests this level, right? And then we kind of would expect it to probably roll over from there, and altcoins get their time to shine again, right? So a couple of altcoins that we've been talking about: Solana reclaimed the range low through here. Rounder still pushing pretty aggressively to the upside and outperforming most other coins. Illuvium is one of the ones that I wanted to talk about as well. Let's just quickly get that up. A quicker look at APT. Still not much happening here, to be honest. Right, want to get a clean breakout of this trend line. This is one that outperformed quite aggressively. So a lot of altcoins are sort of still in that tight trading range, like BTC was recently, but we've broken out the top of that. So, could start to get long entry triggers on a breakout of this little tight range through here, and also the downtrend through there, right? And then Illuvium, a reclaim of 50, probably triggering entry for me on this one. Right, but I wouldn't be surprised if this ended up rolling over one more time and swept this low first. So that's sort of the entry that I'm waiting on that one. So a lot of altcoins are similar to that, but a few of them are starting to look pretty nice. Let's have a quick look at XRP, because that's one of the ones that I just bought yesterday. We do have nice little structure here and break of the inverse head and shoulders, right? So pretty clean there. It came back, had a nice retest on the lower time frames as well. We can see it in there. Right, and that was just a little bit too tempting for me, and I actually got in right here on the retest of this trend line, and it's pushing quite nicely to the upside. So I have to wait to see. This one is basically a play expecting the trial to go well and they get a good result in their case versus the SEC, because if it does, it's going to pump pretty aggressively, I think, to the upside. And all the rumors are saying that it will. So it'll definitely get a lot of eyes on if that happens. So yeah, I think it's worth taking a little bit of position. So I did, until the court case news ends up coming out. So that's pretty much it for today, guys. Thanks a lot for tuning in. We'll see you all in the next episode.